This is a short tutorial on using the crop tool in Photoshop. I want to remind you that up here in the top corner, I'm in photography mode, so my layout of my interface for Photoshop is geared toward photography. Now over here is your crop tool. Now the crop tool is pretty powerful as it has a lot of ways of dynamically cropping to specific formats and dimensions, but it can be easily messed up. So right now mine is in what's called square mode, but if you're looking up at this top pane, you have a set of presets. Now you can do a ratio, so a 1:1. You can put in a specific height, right, or width, height, and resolution. You can do the original ratio. You can change to a 5:7, right, and these are kind of standard dimensions for printing. And you can also do web dimensions, right, so they're fit to screen. And so if you want to, for instance, do a projection or something like that, this would be a good way of getting a proportionally accurate crop of your image to fit full screen. Okay, so you can also generate your own crop presets if you want, but I think that gets a little advanced. So what I'm going to show you is a couple things to consider when making a crop. So for instance, I'm going to stick to our kind of web mode for right now. This is our crop in web mode. You can flip that. So if this is my horizontal versus vertical, I've flipped that to crop for horizontal versus vertical on the screen. I can change the resolution in pixels per inch, or don't worry about pixels per centimeter. You can also clear this, so you can restart and do another dimension. If you want to keep your original ratio, you can. You can also look at it in different ways with different overlays to help you crop if you want. I stick to either this grid or this kind of rule of thirds, which is a kind of balancing composition in photography. Don't worry about any of this yet. You can also do this really neat thing, I'll show you in a second, but I first want to show you a couple of ways to interface with this crop tool. So if I grab from a corner here, you can see that it pulls in but stays proportionate. So if I pulled down, for instance, it flipped into horizontal mode when I had nowhere to go, but it's staying proportionate. So it's not cropping beyond its original dimensions, its original ratio of height to width, or width to height. Okay, now I'm able to then drag and move this around, and it's giving me a slight preview here to show me what that crop would look like. You have the ability up here to accept, cancel, or revert out of that initial crop. You can also pull from the center here, and look at this. When I pull from this side, this is where it starts to skew and throws off the proportion. So now I'm no longer in that original proportion. Okay, if I back out there, I can also hold down the Shift and Alt key at the same time, and it will maintain my center when I'm pulling in from this corner and hold that proportion as well. Okay, Shift and Alt on a Mac. Right? Now, there's another really neat thing here too called the Straighten tool, where if you select this, it looks like a level with a bubble. You can straighten this image to something you determine in the image. So say I want this text to be straight. I click here, drag to here, and it's going to straighten that in relation to the edge of my frame. And notice it's going to have to crop in. It's maintaining that same proportion, but it's going to maintain that crop so it doesn't fall outside the frame. Alright? Now I could accept that, and now that text will be straight. Alright? Now I'm going to back out of that, and I'm going to do one more here. I'm going to select that content aware. I'm going to select this image, and I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt, because what I want to do is go slightly beyond this image and make it a little bigger. And what it's going to attempt to do is determine, based on what it's seeing as the kind of pixel color relationship and shape relationships around the edge of this image, it's going to try to extend that. Now this takes a little bit of processing power. Let's see if it gives us something believable. So if I, for instance, had I really wanted this image to be a little bit more spacious. Notice how here I'll do it before and then after. It was determining some kind of content awareness based on what is around those edges to extend that. Alright? Now, I think that's a pretty thorough explanation of the crop tool. If you have any more questions, don't hesitate to ask, as always.